You're live. You're live. You're live. Thanks very much. I'm glad I'm live. So I'm just going to do a short one. Ha ha. No, this has to be short because I have to go out. The whole CPTSR issue has been talked about, written about, lectures done about it. There's a lot spoken about the subject of CPTSR, CPTSD. It's a strange one because it's almost like a quantum physics type of problem. It seems, not that I understand quantum physics, but what I can gather is the closer you look. I spoke to a quantum physicist who's a mate of my cousin's, and it sounded like the closer you look at the problem, the more complex it becomes, and the more you try and reduce it down to a single quanta, the smallest possible unit. So we can go, finally, we figured out what the pixels are here, and therefore we can build backwards from there and understand reality and understand the formation of this. The more complex it becomes and the more it seems to wiggle away from you. PTSD is like that. CPTSD is like that. And so I wouldn't want anybody to have a perception of this channel, this project, what I do as being anti-establishment per se. You should understand that, well, several things. Like, I have regular followers who I'm in regular contact with who are general practitioners. They're GPs, they're clinicians, they're psychotherapists, they're psychiatrists, and the conversation is not adversarial in the slightest. There are people who obviously you can't stand me, but you know, that's life, isn't it? You know, if you've got a certain flavor, then some people are definitely going to spit it out. But I'm not anti-establishment in the sense of, you know, I do things that nobody else does. Far from it. I mean, many of my solutions, most of the solutions I offer, would be found to be agreeable by the majority of counsellors. In fact, to date, not one mental health professional has ever contacted me and said, this technique that you're doing here, this is why you shouldn't do it. It can't possibly work. Never, never, in thousands of emails over the last 7 years. So whilst, and I'm not saying I'm a posturing nincompoop either. I'm not just saying, oh, I posture like I'm anti-establishment. I'm posturing like I'm rebellious because, you know, it's a cool image and maintains people's attention. I'll do whatever works. And the mainstream solutions, for example, I bang on about emotional literacy and the importance of emotional literacy. That's very mainstream. You know, the idea of becoming in contact with your emotions, there'll be very, very few counsellors and psychotherapists out there who wouldn't want to hear that. However, I do have major complaints, worries, concerns with the way mainstream academic psychology is done. See, I'm not, my qualification in terms of a degree is just a BSc in psychology, which is academic psychology, which is, and I've always said this, I think is fairly shit. When people tell me they're like, oh, I really like what you do, you've inspired me to go and do a degree in psychology, I'm usually pretty dismissive of it and say I wouldn't advise that you do that at all, because it's fairly useless. It is useless. Like, there isn't like, oh yeah, we can't wait to hire a graduate in psychology with a BSc in psychology. How useful that would be. And one of the problems with it is it enforces a modality of thinking about subjects that can actually hold the problems in place. And I fall prey to that. So I certainly don't consider myself an academic. I certainly don't consider myself an academic psychologist. However, when I write and when I make material, there is a hangover from that, because there's a certain way I was trained to think about the subject and to talk about the subject. I've always used humor as a means of maintaining people's attention and of keeping them listening. And I know that humor seems to have something to do with options of response, seems to have something to do with ameliorating people's sense of being overwhelmed. It makes them feel less overwhelmed and more in control if they can find it amusing. It's less frightening. I would like to say that I am still growing and learning, and I am personally growing and learning, and I'm growing and learning in my role, in my job, and what I do here with this project. And as my recovery improves, I would like to think the quality of my coaching would improve as well. And here's something. It's not just that humor is helpful in multiple ways. It's actually that it's opposite. Being rigid and being very, very serious about the subject may actually be extremely detrimental, and it may actually cause a lot of trouble unnecessarily. If you're trying to recover from PTSD, PTSR, post-traumatic response, or complex post-traumatic response, you have a big enough job in front of you as it is without making it worse. You want to find every little potential advantage that you can in moving forward. Every tiny little potential advantage that you can in moving forward is going to be of help to you. When we take an academic, serious approach to a subject, we also need to be aware that we're constantly learning and we're constantly in communication with the unconscious. And what this may communicate to the unconscious is this is a very serious and big problem. So, we walk into a room for a seminar and we all have a bit of a laugh and a joke. And, I'll stand at the front of the room and do my thing and clown around a bit and make people laugh and get them relaxed and stuff. And then I'll clear my throat and go, okay, it's time to talk about childhood trauma or CPTSR or borderline personality disorder, and the atmosphere changes in the room. And you could say, well, we should have a serious approach because that's respectful. And I would say, maybe we should be more serious about humor. Maybe we should take humorousness a little bit more seriously and actually start to question whether we do ourselves a disservice by going, oh, this is a very serious. Well, for a start, it's complex and it's post, not pre, it's post. So it's already happened. So there's nothing you can do about it now without a time machine. And it was traumatic. Ooh, not uncomfortable, not unpleasant, not boundary breaking or, self-image affecting, traumatic. And it's post-traumatic and it's a disorder. Oh, you mean like a personality disorder? No, that's just a linguistic coincidence. Oh, because it sounds like you just told me I had a personality disorder. What would make you think that? Well, here's borderline personality disorder, and you just told me I have complex post-traumatic disorder. Maybe this is not good. I mean, if we accept and we build on the idea that we live inside of language, that words are important and that we're living inside of a narrative, maybe we should be careful with the narrative, and maybe we should be careful with the meta communication. So there's the words that we use, we should be careful with them, and the way in which we use them. I always thought that was icing, decoration, and not cake. And now I'm wondering if it might be cake, a little bit cake. I mean, the work is the cake, really, but to write off the approach, the words we use, and whether we're light and humorous about it, is not really cake. It's just icing and decoration. And I'm like, no, it's more than icing and decoration. It's communicating to the deepest unconscious parts of you that this is a phenomena. It's not locked. It's not rigid. It's not insurmountable. It's not permanent. It's not permanent, pervasive, and personal. It's incidental. It's coincidental in many ways, and it is passing already. I mean, imagine that if you went to somebody and they said, look, even if you did nothing at all, Just imagine if they said this. Don't worry about whether it's true or not. We're talking about communication, language, and the assumptions that we have. What if you sat down with somebody and they very confidently said, "Oh, you've got that CPTSR. Yeah, don't worry, because all the research indicates that if you do nothing at all, it'll get better. So you're already getting better. So just by the fact that you're still breathing, as you breathe in and out now, you actually are better now and healed more now than a few moments ago." That would have a different impact on you. And it probably would lead to you healing a lot faster. But here we go in, we jump in with the inner critic, very serious, and say, well, that's placeboing people. You don't want to placebo people. And I'm like, why? Why do I not want to placebo people? I don't want to lie to people. I don't want to bullshit them. But if I go, this is a serious business and takes a very long time and the prognosis is not good, it's not positive, it's going to be extremely hard and painful. Isn't that sort of encouraging you to believe that it's going to be extremely hard and painful when maybe it doesn't need to be? Or maybe you could actually say, it's tricky, but people have recovered from it. Loads of people have recovered from it, by the way. I mean, sometimes I wish I had been a bit more academic about this and kept the numbers and kept some kind of an acceptable record, because all I have is anecdotal evidence and emails. But there are people who barely functioned in life. Well, I was one of them, just didn't function in life. And now I kind of do. And there's hundreds of people that I've worked with or have contacted me after using the material, and they have recovered. So they're humans. They have certain hardware, they have certain software. You're also human, you have certain software, you have certain hardware. If they made any progress at all, and they did, they made major progress, no matter where you are in the sliding scale of CPTSR, some progress should be possible. And what if it meant, like, if you're in a really bad way and your CPTSR was extreme and you were like functioning at like a 1 out of 10, and we said, dude, we'll do that. You can graft away at this for a year and you will only go from a 1 to a 2. You might go, that's shit. I don't know. I want more than that. Okay, well, we all want more than that. But in a year, a 10% increase in the quality of life is pretty big. Like, okay, it's not amazing, but it's, if you said 10% is like, it's the one of my concerns is the way in which we're thinking about it. Now, one of the subjects that particularly is of interest to me at the moment is unconscious rules. We are all living by them, and I said this. Unfortunately, it was a good Instagram video that I did, but deleted Instagram, so you can't watch that. Maybe I did a YouTube video with it as well. I wanted to do a series of notes where I would just leave like video notes, more for the coaches, counselors, and therapists, and I'd just be like, here, use this if it's useful. If it's not, don't worry about it. And for people who are working on themselves, because the vast majority of people who follow my material are pretty literate in psychology and in therapy. I mean, some of them, like, they know way more about different modalities than I do. And it was to say, if your client is acting as if they are terrified of their father, but they tell you that they absolutely love and adore their father, which message should you listen to? It's not really a hard question, is it? In a healing context, you'd listen to the big message. The big message is that they're terrified of their father, because that's how they act. They say one thing, but they act another. We ourselves do the same thing. So sometimes you can detect unconscious rules that are operating in your life by how you act. Like, if a person goes to a city and every time they go to that city, they feel bad, maybe they hate that city. But because of their self-image and because of the way they think about themselves and think about their personal history and their story, they can't admit that they hate the place. And yet, when they go there, they feel sick and they feel disrupted and they're not happy. Maybe they hate that city. Maybe the truth is that they hate it because that's how they act and that's how they respond. When people tell me that despite doing the exercises for CPTSR, mine, somebody else's, whatever, a book over there, and a different, because there's different courses, there's loads of courses out there now for CPTSD. They still didn't get better. My first sort of line of investigation is, did you actually do the exercises as was described? 100 times out of 100, we'll find the answer is no. So when they say this course that I found this CPTSD course online, it costs this like $70. I downloaded it and I gave it a go for a week and it didn't work for me. Okay, did you actually do the exercises? No. So was it that the course didn't work, or that you couldn't do the or that you ended up not doing the exercises? I ended up not doing the exercises. This has happened a lot. So there's a good number of people that this is happening for, where you can give the exercises and they just don't do it. So then I started to say, okay, this looks like an unconscious rule, but I know it's unconscious because the people will come to me and they say the exercise doesn't work, and I'll go, did you do it? And they'll go, yeah. Did you really? Yeah. Did you do it exactly as I told you to do it? Yeah. Did you do it 5 times a day? No. Did you write down what I told you? No. Did you even do it once? No. Okay, I fucking didn't. You'd be like, well, you may have thought about doing it and planned to do it, but if you didn't actually do it, it's not going to work. Why would somebody have the pills in their cabinet that cures the disease but not take them? Possibly because of an unconscious rule that says, thou shalt not heal. So there may be parental, tyrannical, maniacal commandments in place, and one of them may be, thou shalt not heal. Thou shalt honor thy father and mother by never raising up higher than thy father and mother. Thou shalt obey thy father and mother by being what thy father and mother wishes you to be. What? Well, if your father and mother want you to be sick and weak and dependent, and if you imagine like a decision tree, the branches of a decision tree, and the higher order rule is, thou shalt obey thy father and mother. Okay, got it. Boom, that's in the computer. Your mother and father need you to be sick. They'll never tell you, but you know very well that if you heal, become an adult, and move on with your life, that they will be hurt, that they will be agitated, that they will be frightened and worried by that. Then you might choose to never move on with your life. And therefore, every time you pick up the pills that are in the cabinet, and you've got mates who've taken the pills, and you've made mates online, and they've gone, did you do the course? It's fucking awesome, isn't it? I mean, it sucks. Like the first 3 days, I was crying and it freaked me out, but then it was amazing, right? Wasn't it cool? And you're there going, yeah, about that. Kind of didn't take the pills, kind of didn't do it. Why? Why would so many, I mean, it's a significant number of people, not take the pills? And I think that's got to be the explanation, is the unconscious rule that says don't heal. So we really are. I knew when I first came across that double bind concept, I was 21. There's one of the first videos on Spartan Life Coach back from 2012 is, you should look it up after this one. It's called the Gregory Bateson double bind theory of schizophrenia. And it's me describing Gregory Bateson's double bind theory of schizophrenia. And I knew when I came across that there was something there that was essential that went beyond even what Gregory Bateson was saying. But I knew he had found something that was fucking critical. He's an anthropologist, not a psychiatrist, and he observed people in a psychiatric institution, humans. He observed humans. The doctors and the nurses would frequently do things that were convenient for the doctors and nurses, and then they would tell the family of the patient that it was done for the patient. So the family would be like, why is my son drooling in the corner, jacked up on Thorazine? Well, because he had an incident on Sunday. He was a load of bullshit, basically. Just trumped up charges. They wanted him whacked out because it's easier for them to handle the hospital. So he noticed that people were being placed inside of a double bind where there would be two conflicting orders of command. You couldn't say, hey, there's two conflicting orders of command because you'd be hurt. So you need to be in an institution or a political prisoner or in a family. And you couldn't leave. And you couldn't fight or negotiate. You couldn't fight, you couldn't fawn, you couldn't flight. It forces you to freeze. Catch-22s force a freeze response. We are all freeze responders. It is good and it is right that Pete Walker tells us in the book, CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I've decided I'm going to write a rip-off book. It's going to be called From Survival to Thrivival. And it's going to be under my pseudonym, which is Rick Stroller. And he's getting no credit. None. Don't show him this video. I'm just going to rip it off. What? This is America, baby. It's capitalism. I got to compete. It's like I got to get out there. I got to compete. I'm joking. He's right to tell us to find what our primary response and our secondary response is. But / and remember, we're all freeze responders because we were all placed in a catch-22. Gregory Bateson's double bind theory of schizophrenia applied to people with CPTSR. The institution is in here. This is the asylum. He said, laughing maniacally, which was disturbing. This is the asylum. Here we go. And the superego is the evil doctor. The superego is the evil nurse, the inner critic, as we would call it. That part, it's a part. It's a part of you that's doing a job. But it's acting as jailer. It's acting as judge, jury, and executioner. It's acting as O'Brien to Winston in 1984. You know, it's the brainwashing torturer. And it's in here. And it's in here. And it's in the whole central nervous system. And we're saying, hey, heal from CPTSR. And then the system goes, okay, all right. So you're gonna heal. You're gonna heal from all this. Yep. You're gonna stop dissociating. You're gonna stop drinking and taking drugs. You're gonna stop being addicted to porn and gambling. You're gonna stop hiding from people. You're gonna stop self-isolating. You're gonna stop all these behaviors that you say you're sick of in your life. You're going to stop being emotionally mature. You're going to deal with this. You're going to process it. And then through that, you're going to grow and grow and grow in ways that you can't even imagine and just move off into the unknown as a new individual. Is that about right? You think that's happening, do you? Hold him down, nurse. Bring the Thorazine. If you're running a rule that says you're not allowed to heal, that ain't happening. We must address this. Like, that's critical. That's absolutely critical. And it's only as I, in my own development, working with myself, that I've recently realized this and gone, oh dear. So there is a softening around the issue that needs to take place. And then there is this issue of the unconscious rule. Thou shalt heal. You do have permission to heal. Needs to be slowly and organically internalized because it works like, as we said about narcissistic abuse, it functions like a kind of psychological and emotional AIDS. It stops the system that protects the body from working. So then a cold will kill you. People with full-blown AIDS would typically die of pneumonia. They die in a hospital of pneumonia. That's the actual the thing that is the final thing for them, or some other infection they catch in the environment of the hospital. The system that allows you to heal has been switched off. So when you reach for the pills that have the cure, your hand weirdly will just go, ah. Same as when you pick up your pen and your pad to do, I don't know, an emotional literacy exercise, or you try and set an alarm on your phone to do a flashbacks exercise, or say a locusea, whatever it happens to be, you just find yourself going into freeze, detach, vivid imaginations. Whoa, 15 minutes has gone by. I return to reality. Oops, I've run out of time. Isn't that convenient? And on you go. And it's kind of like the inner, jailer. We're in Shawshank Redemption. I can't remember the actor's name. But when he's like psychologically torturing Tim Robbins, he's wonderful. He's perfect. He's this rigid Baptist Southern dude, and he says to Tim Robbins, if you keep what does he say? Tim Robbins accuses him of being obtuse, and he says to him, "I will cast you down with the sodomites." Basically threatens him with rape. If he doesn't obey, if Tim Robbins, and he doesn't obey, and he is then cast down with the sodomites, the punishment will be severe, because you need to. Your training is your enslaved conditioning is you're a slave and you bow, you stay low, you arch the back, you tilt the head down. If you raise it up, you get the whip. Get back down. Sorry. I'll cast you down with sodomites. To understand that, therefore, we have to kind of get past the evil nurse in the psych ward. We need to get past the evil jailer in the prison. In order to make this work, we need to find a way of getting past them. And the cunning thing to do is to cease to make them an evil nurse or an evil jailer. Because they're really not. It's actually a part of you. It's a part of you. And it's actually probably, I hypothesize, one of my many hypotheses, is it's a childish part of you. That evil nurse who runs the psych ward, who's torturing you, the evil jailer who's torturing you, it's probably like the Wizard of Oz. That's probably a little kid. That's a little kid doing its job. It's a maniacal, psychopathic little kid. It's Lord of the Flies. Because it was raised in a Lord of the Flies environment, and when it split off from you, it was a terrifying environment with chaos and no rules and savagery, or at least that's how your sensitive child central nervous system understood it. And a part of you split and said, it's my job to keep the system, the ego, basically, if the superego's job is to keep the ego in check. This is how I'm going to keep it in check, by savagely just beating it to pieces, no matter what it does. Where what the superego is supposed to do is it's supposed to repeat the injunctions and truths and morality and guidance and principle of a loving parent, which would include harsh slaps. Don't put that in your mouth. Don't put your fingers in the fucking electric socket. It's not all. A high functioning superego isn't just like and just nah. It's also it's kind, it's compassionate, it's loving, but it needs to have this element of some assertiveness. It needs to be yin and it needs to be yang. I think when we grow up and we lose our yang ability to say no, it's because of this effect. We're going no, where we just have our superego is extremely yang, very dictatorial and very harsh. Well, we don't fucking like that, so we don't want to be that, so we'll be yin. So we over yin, like most codependents are way too yin. The energy is just way too yin, which is a separate issue for a separate day. But like the balancing of yin and yang is something that we need to talk about if we want to continue having sex and populating the planet. That is probably enough on that subject. I'll take a couple of questions and then I need to go. Anti-Gon Papa. So can we call the inner critic inner abuser, or will this make it worse to overcome? Yeah, don't call it. Well, I would like you to go through a period of renaming. rename it. Keep using different names until you find one that fits, but take it off the pedestal. It's a part. Parts therapy. Many systems of counseling and psychotherapy use parts therapy. It basically means that you have different parts of you that have different drives and ambitions and goals. So Mr. Bon viveur in me wants to go out and meet people and travel and and then Mr. Safety is in me, and he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. However, did you think about this and what could go wrong and how dangerous it is? And then you have inner parts conflict, and then parts therapy seeks to resolve the conflict in those parts. Think of it as a part. Think of it as an infantile response to a hostile environment. That's like, I'd rather think of like a little kid, 6, Lord of the Flies. It's a little savage. It's covered in dirt and its own filth. And it's built like in my one, has like a spear, and it's built like a crazy hat. And it's like, nee. It's got bad teeth because it's never brushed its teeth. It's got like snot caked on its face. And it's like, nee. And I'll be like, what are you doing? Yeah. It's just this little fucking monster. And it's got all the brutality, the boundaryless psychopathic brutality of a child. There's a reason why, child soldiers are recruited in Africa, and why child soldiers have been used across the globe, or young, at least, soldiers have been used across the globe for centuries. I mean, probably that's why we call the infantry, the infants. Horrifying when I found that out. I was absolutely fucking horrified by that, but look it up. These are the entities, the boys and girls at this young age, where if they're given an ideological structure, they'll see it through to way beyond any moral boundary. They'll just obey. Something told this little savage, like mine now is a little twig-headed, he's a little scabby twig-headed savage, and I'll be like, listen, you, with your fucking snotty face and your bad teeth, you're just behind the curtain, with the bells and whistles, like in The Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man behind the Iron Curtain, and there's smoke, projections, special effects, witches. It's like this theme park, costumed adults wandering around, pretending to be adults, for instance, pretending to be lions, pretending to be tin men with crap makeup on. It's theatre, but vaudeville. It's cheesy theatre. The whole thing, like, this little kid is running a cheesy theatre show to con me into enslavement. And this worked when I was a little boy, because fuck, I didn't know any better. I couldn't see the shitty pancake makeup and the bad way they were delivering their lines. But I'm a grown-ass man now. I shouldn't be falling. So to me, that's my reframe. So if you want to call it inner abuser, and that's useful. If you want to think of if it amuses you to think of the nurse from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if it amuses you to think of the guy from Shawshank, but ultimately, when you've done that and you've thought of it in a new way, which creates neuroplasticity and change, bring it down. It's a part of you. It's a part of you that, in response to a toxic, hostile environment, obeyed a command. I'm not going to get into this now. Nobody said to that part, you must do this. You all know what projections are. There's a concept and a process called introjection, where you develop introjects, and it's based on the child's presuppositions and misunderstandings, and sometimes understandings of the implicit communication from parental figures. It's a little bit more complicated, but basically what you do need to understand is a part of you was misguided, and in some senses it's not broken. It's actually doing its job. That little twig-headed savage soldier in me, he's doing what he was told to do. He was told, keep the ego down, keep it submissive, keep it freezing, and keep it fawning. Why? We might die. We might die here. Every time you stand up straight, you get a punch or a kick or a slap or a humiliation or a shaming. Every time you stand up straight and are skillful, expressive, being the fullness of you, I hate to say it, but you can become the target for selection by adults who have their own issues. What do you learn? It's bad to be me. It's bad to stand up straight. It's bad to be expressive. It's bad to put my head above the parapet. I'll stay low, safe down here. So that angry little savage has caused me a lot of trouble. But when I was a kid, he thought he was keeping me alive. Twighead. Twighead. There you go. That's what the inner critic should be called. Twighead. Snot-faced Twighead. He operates the theatre and now is the Wizard of Oz to keep me alive. He doesn't understand that we're not there anymore. This is the problem with all post-traumatic stress responses. They are somewhat appropriate to the environment in which the trauma occurs. They're not appropriate outside. Combat veteran who comes back who's extremely aggressive. It was okay when he lived in a tent in the desert, sleeping next to, a machine gun, surrounded by men all doing the same, or men and women all doing the same thing. It's not great when he's in the local supermarket. So that whole, our idea of people going into combat and coming back and they have PTSD, and you go, what happened? I'm like, nothing. Nothing needs to happen. You just need to go and live that for 3 months or 6 months. That's stressful enough. Please remember that, by the way, because I've been in group sessions where people have not been very sensitive to that. Like, being in an environment of such high hostility. I'm not a snowflake. I don't encourage snowflake culture, but it is stressful in ways that can damage you. Plus, when you come back to civilian life from that environment, civilian life is very, very stressful now in ways that it wouldn't have been 100 years ago or even 40 years ago. So that's the military PTSD thing is well, not even military, law enforcement PTSD. It's a complicated issue, but you've got to be, don't look and never ask. Never ask. Can I hear the fascinating traumatic story? I'm always like, just well, anyway, moving on, everybody. Just try and cut it off, because it doesn't need to be anything. It's enough to just be in that environment. Similarly for you as a kid, it was enough to just be in that environment. I'll take one more question now. Okay. British culture roughly equals complaining about anything as a sign of weakness. Yeah, it's our culture is very sick. British culture is incredibly sick now. Bob Jacobs asks, how do I change my beliefs? It's a great question. Probably worth a whole video. I'll do a video on it. Mary says, the inner warrior can't expect to do high tea. It needs adjustment time. Exactly. You send these people to do these jobs in these environments for 3, 6, 9, 12 months at a time, and then just go, right, come back and just sit patiently in traffic now. I'm like, I don't think that's reasonable. I think that's a bit much. Any thought on Peter A. Levine's somatic work? I don't know anything about it, mate. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit lazy with looking at other people's work. Sorry. Livy now says, really, I thought British culture was highly empathic. Oh, no. No, it's not. Dear Richard, may you please speak on morality? Non-dualism stuff is horrible. It's not really my forte. I don't know whether I know about it enough. I can just black my way through a video if you're interested. Here's me bluffing on a subject that I don't really understand, because this is YouTube. I could do it, yeah. For the love of God, I want to slap one of my classmates, but for legal reasons, I don't. I'm kidding. Howdy, says the Ancient Lantern. Hello, Ancient Lantern. It's good to have you here. When are you going to do face-to-face chats like you used to do? You mean counseling? Do you mean like the coaching? I don't know whether I'll ever do them again, mate. Zizek debate video. Oh God, it would just be me ranting about Jordan Peterson. How do we differentiate the codependent from the narcissist other than self-awareness? Ooh, God. How should I put it? The narcissist is a codependent. The narcissist, a human being who's developed narcissistic personality disorder or response as an infantile defense to intense childhood trauma, is by definition highly codependent, to the extent that they depend on other people's attention for their sense of self so intensely that when it goes away, they experience it as a kind of death, a fear of non-existence. So they are codependent. But you need to be aware that that is CPTSD. That's absolutely a CPTSD response. What we look for, I use the word codependent in this way. I'm not being facetious. I just want to give you a full answer that addresses all of the sub issues, but without boring you to death. If you're like, well, there is no, that I'm aware of, official clinical recognized term for the target of the narcissist. So we say codependent, and we say the person with CPTSD as though the narcissist isn't a codependent, doesn't have CPTSD, but they do. So one way of doing it would be to say predator and prey. The narcissistic personality type, as all the other personality disorders, individuals in the cluster B spectrum, are predatory. They're neurotically predatory. They have to be the exploiter at all times. The recipient, the prey, the codependent, the fawn responder. Some people like to say echo. So if we're going to use Narcissus in the Greek myth, we should use echo from the Greek myth. That's fine. I like it. So the echo, fawning, codependent. We are neurotically prey. They are neurotically dictatorial, tyrannical, yang. We are neurotically submissive, horizontally structured, and yin. Neither is good. Both are bad. When you see people online and you read articles where they talk about the dance that takes place between the codependent in inverted commas, and the person with MPD, there's a lot to that. There's a hell of a lot to it. Like, it's a marriage made in hell, the hell of childhood trauma. We go, in some respects, we go perfectly hand in glove. I'm looking for a tyrant, and they say, that's wonderful. I'm looking for a slave. And I'm like, my God, I can't believe we've met. This is fantastic. When can you start work? And they're like, I'm free like now. And you go, I don't believe it. When can you move in? And he goes, I just got kicked out by my ex. What about tonight? Well, we'll just buy a toothbrush at the local store. And so it goes. It's the predatory nature. The distinguishment between the two is not hard. Who is being neurotically predatory and exploitative, and who is being neurotically naive and prey-like and ready to be exploited. I have slightly abused the terms yang and yin there. I am not an ignoramus on the subject. I've been studying Chinese philosophy since I was 13, and I recently spoke with a doctor of Chinese philosophy, and will do again at the middle of next month, because I'm going to a seminar of his in Ibiza about this subject. I did slightly abuse it there, though. Slightly. That's not really yang and yin, but it's kind of like that. So it's worth reading that way. So that would be the difference between the two. Richard, how smart should your girlfriend be? Whose girlfriend? Your girlfriend? I don't know. I have no idea what your needs are, Sarah. I don't know how smart you would want her to be. Smart enough for love and happiness. Ibrahim says sociopathic women are a lot of fun. Well, whatever you like to do with your weekends, sir. Gabor Mate goes along with Levine's Healing Trauma book. I was listening to Gabor Mate today talking about emotional things being lined up with cognitive capacity. So there's a good YouTube talk he does. It's just obviously if you search the title, Gabor Mate, Emotions and Cognitive Functioning, really, really good. I listened to that today. Can you please do a video on, may you please do a video on Taoism? I don't know why this is, mate, but you can't say, may you please. It's a weird English thing. You can only say, may I please pick up the peanut butter. I couldn't say, may you please pick that up. I could only say, could you please, or would you please, was probably even better because you're physically capable of doing, would you please pick that up for me? But for some reason, you can't say, may you. Pedant, 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 pedant. What do you think of Craig Malkin's Revisited Narcissism? I know nothing about it, so I can't have any opiniones. Sorry, when will you marry? I'm not in a hurry. Do you think internet trolls have personality disorders? I think many people with personality disorders enjoy trolling because May is asking permission. Because if May is asking permission, that would be a really simple answer. Yeah, I can't ask permission of myself unless I have CPTSD. So you'd be like, no, I can say may I. I'm asking the super ego. People are like, that's wrong. And you go, it's wrong for you. But y'all don't have an inflamed super ego. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your is Aaron Mate the journalist Gabor's son? I had no idea. Some good questions there. Sorry, guys, I've run out of time. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I hope that was useful. And I'll be on again tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Cheers. Thanks for helping out, Ancient Lantern. Thanks for moderating again. Cheers.